when my niece handed me the tiny floral printed schedule and said, "Auntie, you'll have your own section for the kids. 15 of them, from noon till midnight." Brr, I smiled. But something inside me went still. I remember holding that little paper like it was an invitation to my own humiliation. The ink was neat and cheerful, pastel blue headings, cartoon balloons drawn at the corners. My niece, Lacey, had always been thoughtful in that way, but the words, "Childcare duty, Aunt Clara babysitter," they stung sharper than I expected. The smell of buttercream frosting filled the kitchen that morning. We were tasting cakes for her wedding, a big day the whole family had been planning for months. Everyone had a role. Her mother handled decor, her cousins organized music and photos, her sister managed catering. Abru and me? I was apparently the help. He, the babysitter. Free. I didn't say anything right away. I just folded that piece of paper and slipped it into my purse, pretending I didn't notice the part where she'd even written, "Bring activities or toys." I'm 58 years old. I've raised 3 kids and helped raise half the neighborhood, but somehow, in their grand family event, that was my place. Not as a guest, not as an aunt to be honored, but as someone to keep the children from being in the way. And the strange part is, they truly thought they were being kind. Before all that, my days were simple, quiet, even comforting in their routine. I lived alone in a little house at the edge of town, with a porch swing that creaked when the wind changed directions, and a garden that smelled of rosemary and mint. Brr. Most mornings I'd make coffee around 6. I'd open the blinds to let in that sleepy orange light, listen to the kettle hum, and check on my plants. Basil on the windowsill, a stubborn peace lily that refused to bloom. Since retiring from the school cafeteria 3 years ago, I'd grown to love silence. After years of noise, clattering trays, teenage laughter, ringing bells, calm felt like healing. Brr. My children were grown. Marcus, my eldest, worked in another state. Naomi, my middle one, had a small family of her own, and my youngest, Eric, was always too busy to visit but sent texts now and then that said things like, "You good, Ma?" So when Lacey, my late sister's daughter, announced her engagement, I was thrilled. I've always had a soft spot for her. She was the kind of child who'd bring you a daisy she'd picked on the walk home, saying it looked lonely. Her fiancé Ethan was polite, with a nervous smile and a way of speaking that made you feel he was always asking permission to exist. When the wedding planning started, I offered to help however I could. I meant things like folding napkins, arranging flowers, maybe helping the caterer if needed. Not once did it occur to me that they'd make me staff. Abru. The meetings went on for weeks. I'd stop by after lunch, sip coffee while the women talked about colors, ivory or champagne, and fabrics that all looked the same to me. I enjoyed watching them chatter, their faces bright with excitement. It reminded me of my own wedding years ago, the way my mother hummed as she pinned lace to my veil, the sound of my husband's voice calling me his miracle. Those memories come back like photographs now, faded, but still clear enough to ache. The first time I sensed something off was during one of those planning sessions. I had just finished helping Lacey's mother, my sister-in-law Helen, sort gift bags. She handed me a clipboard with a list of volunteers, laughing as she said, "Briggs, Clara, we should put you down for the kids' corner. You're the only one with the patience for that crowd." Abru. I laughed too, thinking she was joking, but a week later, there it was, printed neatly on the official wedding itinerary. At first, I told myself not to take it personally. They just need help, Clara, don't be sensitive. But there was a pinch in my chest that wouldn't go away, because underneath that polite request was something else. A quiet assumption that my time wasn't worth as much, that I didn't belong among the guests in pretty dresses sipping champagne. I'd be in a side room, making sure toddlers didn't smear cake on the bride's gown. And the worst part, they didn't even think it was wrong. That night, I sat on my porch with a blanket around my shoulders and the moonlight falling across the wooden floorboards. The crickets were loud, and I could smell the dampness of the earth after a short rain. I thought about how easily families can forget who you are, how they can shrink you down to the most convenient version of yourself. To them, I was Aunt Clara, good with kids. They'd forgotten the rest of me, the woman who'd worked 2 jobs, who'd lost a husband, who'd kept this family fed through lean years and funerals and storms. And maybe, I realized, that was my fault too. When you spend a lifetime helping, people stop seeing it as help. They see it as your role. Ibrahim, but something in me shifted that night. It was small, like the sound of a latch being quietly undone. The next morning, I went to see Lacey. She was in the middle of packing little mason jars with rose petals, her face glowing with pre-wedding excitement. I asked gently, "Sweetheart, I saw the program. You've got me listed for the kids?" "Lieber." She looked up, cheerful as ever. "Oh, Auntie, yes! You're so good with them. Mom said you wouldn't mind. It'll only be during the ceremony and reception. We'll pay you, of course." "Eber," that word, pay, hit me like a cold wind. "Pay me," I repeated softly. "Brrs Modden," she nodded, still smiling, completely unaware of the way my voice had started to shake. Shake. Bruck. "Yeah, just a small thank you. You know, since it's such a big job. 15 kids. You'll basically be our hero." "Brr, hero. Babysitter, staff, we're all the same to them." I smiled then. One of those polite, brittle smiles you give when you've already decided something in silence. And in that moment, I knew I wasn't going to be anyone's I'd help at a wedding that should have treated me like family. After that conversation with Lacey, something inside me went quiet. Not angry quiet, the kind that simmers and shakes, but a calm, observing quiet, the kind that watches people closely, like you're seeing them for the first time. Bro. I started noticing things, the way Helen would talk about the wedding budget, with we meaning everyone except me. We're covering the caterer, we're paying for decor, we're handling the venue. But when it came to the children's corner, she'd say, like it was separate, smaller, even the tone of her voice changed. Light, cheerful, dismissive. I remember one afternoon at her house where she and the other women were discussing seating arrangements. They had these fancy printed cards spread across the table, names written in gold. I stood near the doorway, smiling, sipping lemonade. Brie. When Helen picked up my card, she paused. "Oh, Clara, we'll just place you near T." He back. "That way you're close to the kids' area. Convenient for you." Convenient. That word wrapped around me like a rope. I said nothing, only nodded politely. I'd learned over the years that silence speaks louder than outrage. I think part of me wanted to see just how far they'd take it, how invisible they thought I was willing to be. That evening, I came home, sat by the window and stared at the framed photo of my late husband, Charles. He'd been gone 8 years now, but in moments like this, his presence still filled the house. I could almost hear his low chuckle, that sound he made when he wanted to calm me down. He used to say, "Clara, folks will treat you how you teach them to. If you let them call you small, they'll never see you as tall." Maybe I had, without words out loud that night, maybe I had, without meaning to, taught them that I'd always be the helper, the dependable one, the background, and for a while that role had felt safe, even noble. But now, it just felt lone. Naomi called. The next day, Naomi called, my middle child, my peacemaker. "Mom, I heard you're doing the kids' area for the wedding," she said with that bright tone that always tried to make everything sound fine. "I suppose that's what they've decided," I replied. She hesitated. She has her of dishes in her kitchen through the phone. "Are you okay with that?" "Ooh," I smiled faintly, though she couldn't see it. "Naomi, have you ever noticed that in this family my name gets volunteered before I do?" "Brr." She laughed softly, a knowing sound. "Yeah, Mom, I noticed that a long time ago." Eber. We both went quiet for a moment. Then she added, long after the call ended. Because that was the thing. I didn't have to. I wasn't trapped. But when you spend your life serving everyone else, it takes time to remember your freedom. A week before the wedding, I decided to go to the venue to drop off some decorations I'd been helping Lacey assemble. The hall was grand. Tall chandeliers, long drapes, floors that gleamed like mirrors. But as I walked through, I noticed a side room near the back, half hidden by a divider. It was small, dimly lit, with plastic mats and folding chairs stacked in the corner. A handwritten sign taped to the door said, "Kids Area." Abru. I stood there for a long while looking at it. That's where they expected to spend the day. Not among the laughter and celebration, but tucked away in that little corner, away from the photographs, away from the dancing, away from the family I'd helped raise. And something about that sight broke something gentle in me. I imagined myself sitting there, surrounded by noise, watching through the door as everyone else toasted champagne. My sister-in-law in her satin dress, Lacey and Ethan cutting cake. Ibrahim and me, the babysitter in the background. I walked out quietly, holding back tears. At night, I couldn't sleep. The clock ticked loud in my bedroom and the house felt bigger than usual. Too big, too silent. Abri. I made tea and sat at the kitchen table, tracing my finger over the grain of the wood. I'd had that table since Charles built it, back when we couldn't afford a store-bought one. Every scratch, every stain had a story. And in that stillness, I started thinking about my life, the years of showing up for everyone else. Babysitting, cooking, filling in, smoothing over. Always dependable, always available. Aberkey, and for what? So that the people I loved most could forget I was a person too. The next day, I went to the bridal rehearsal, my last attempt to show up with grace. The air was filled with perfume and laughter, and I watched Lacey twirl in her ivory dress, radiant as the sun. She really was beautiful. But when she turned to me and said, "Auntie, don't forget to bring snacks for the little ones," she still didn't see it. She wasn't being cruel, she was just unaware. That's what hurt the most. It wasn't malice. It was blindness. Aber. So I smiled and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I've got it all figured out." Bahri and I did. Abri just not in the way she thought, because that night opened my notebook and started writing a letter. A short, kind, but firm letter, one that would change the shape of that wedding day. A letter that began, "Dear Lacey, I love you dearly, but I won't be able to attend the wedding as planned." When I sealed that envelope, I felt something shift in my chest. Not guilt, not regret, but peace. It was the kind of peace that comes when you finally remember your own worth. The morning I mailed that letter, the sky was pale and still, like it hadn't made up its mind whether to rain or shine. I stood at the postbox for a long time, holding the envelope between my fingers. It wasn't anger that trembled inside me. It was release. "Sieber," I whispered, "let them handle it," and dropped it in. By the time the letter reached Lacey's house 2 days later, the calm I'd felt had settled deep inside me. I went about my days quietly, tidying the garden, visiting the market, folding laundry. But when the phone rang that evening, I knew before answering who it would be. "Grandma Clara?" It was Lacey's voice, sharp, trembling between disbelief and accusation. "Yes, darling," I said softly. I got your letter. You're not coming? You're serious?" Brie. "I am." Aber's silence filled the line. Thick, heavy, almost humming. Then came the sound of her quick breath. "But you promised," she said. "You said you'd take care of the kids. I already told everyone—" Bricked gently. "Lacey," I interrupted gently, "I never promised. You told me." Abra stopped her. That stopped her. I could hear the confusion in her silence. "Tibur. I love you, sweetheart," I continued, "but I'm not the help. I'm family, and I don't intend to spend your wedding watching other people's children while the rest of you celebrate." There was a pause. Then a scoff. "Grandma, you're making this a big deal over nothing. It's just a few hours and you love the kids." "I do love I said. "That's why I won't do it, because love shouldn't always mean service." Her voice rose a little. "Do you know how much stress this causes me? You're really doing this now?" Breathe. "I'm doing this because I should have done it years ago." Breath. Then I heard the line go dead. The next day, Naomi came over, the only one who'd guessed what was coming. She didn't scold, didn't try to talk me out of it. She just brought tea and sat with me. "Broof, they're all upset," she said eventually. "Ethan's angry. Helen's saying you embarrassed them." I smiled faintly. "I expected that. Ibrumi looked at me. Ayomi looked at me, searching my face. "You okay?" I am, I said. "For the first time in a long while, I really am." That night, my youngest grandson Caleb called. He was only 17. Too young to know the weight of family politics, but old enough to hear the whispers. "Grandma," he said quietly, "Mom's mad, but I get why you did it." I swallowed hard. "You do?" Yeah, she talks like you're just supposed to do ever. I think, like it's normal, but it's not fair. My throat tightened. "Thank you, baby." There was something about that small moment, the way truth slipped through the youngest generation, that made me realize it wasn't just about a wedding. It was about legacy, about what kind of woman I was teaching my granddaughters to be, and what kind of respect I was teaching my grandsons to give. By Friday, word had spread. My sister Myra called next. "Clara, Lord have mercy. What's this I hear about you refusing to help at the wedding?" I chuckled softly. "You make it sound like I committed a crime." Well, you might as well have. Folks are talking, saying you've turned cold, that you're holding grudges." "I'm just holding boundaries, Myra." "Mebrew." There was a long sigh on the other end. Then quietly she said, "The day before the wedding, I drove out to the beach house. I hadn't been there in months, not since Ethan mentioned wanting to fix it up one day, which I'd alwa. Wise known was code for sell it. But that little house still stood there, stubborn as ever, the paint weathered, the porch creaking like an old friend stretching its bones. I unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air smelled faintly of salt and cedar and memory. Every corner had a ghost of something. Charles's fishing hat on the peg, the faded curtains I sewed myself, the photograph of all the kids lined up with popsicles dripping down their chins one summer long ago. I walked through each room slowly, touching walls, brushing dust off old picture frames. I realized how much of myself I'd poured into this place, into my family, and how little of it had ever been seen. And then, as I stood looking out the window toward the sea, I made another decision. If my family could decide what my role should be without asking me, maybe it was time I decided something without asking them. The next morning, wedding day, I woke up early. The world was quiet, wrapped in that blue dawn light. That makes everything feel both new and ancient. I made breakfast, brewed coffee, and dressed in a soft lavender blouse and my Sunday slacks. Not fancy, but peaceful. Then I wrote one more letter, this time to Ethan. "Brooker's son," it began, "I love you. I've spent my life trying to make things easier for you all, and maybe in doing so, I made it too easy for you to forget who I am. I'm not angry, and I'm not punishing anyone. I just need to live my days as a person, not a convenience. You'll understand one day. Abruch." I placed the letter on the mantel, beside Charles's photo. Then I packed a small bag, locked the door, and drove back to the beach house. By the time they realized I wasn't coming, I was sitting on that old porch, barefoot, with the ocean wind curling through my hair. I could almost hear the wedding bells ringing somewhere far away, faint, carried by the air. "Brr," I smiled, sipping my tea. Let them have their day. I was having mine. Later that evening, Naomi sent a message. "Brr, your mom. Thing." S went sideways. Lacey cried. Ethan was furious. But once people realized you weren't there, everyone kept asking where you were. And when they heard why, a few of them said they understood. Even Aunt Myra defended you. I was slow. I read her words slowly, feeling a warmth rise in my chest. And then she added, "Honestly, Mom, the wedding was beautiful, but it felt incomplete without you." "Ibri, that was all I needed to hear." I set my phone down, looked at the sunset bleeding across the water, and whispered, "Sometimes absence speaks louder than presence." Ebroshi and I knew in that moment. My quiet rebellion had been the loudest truth I'd ever told. The wedding came and went without me. Idibur. I didn't check my phone that day, not once. I didn't want to see the missed calls, the angry texts, or the guilt-laced voicemails that I knew were coming. Instead, I walked the shoreline, barefoot, the cold waves touching my toes like they were reminding me I was still alive. For the first time in years, I felt free. Iberhe, but P.E. Ace never stays long when family pride is wounded. Brew. The next morning, I finally turned my phone back on. It buzzed for almost a full minute. 12 missed calls, 8 voicemails, and 1 message that stopped me in my tracks. It was from Ethan. Bri. "We need to talk, Mom. You've made things harder than you realize. Call me back." Ebrus, no, please, no, I love you. Just that. I sighed, set the phone down, and made myself some tea. Ready. That afternoon, Naomi drove down. She walked up the porch steps slowly, like she was approaching a wounded animal she didn't want to scare away. "Hey, Mom," she said softly. "Hey, sweetheart." A brr. She looked tired. Maybe from the wedding, maybe from carrying the weight of everyone's opinions. "Everyone's talking," she began. "Some think you were brave, some think you ruined the day." "Ah, bro," I smiled sadly. "And what do you think?" Sighed. Naomi sat beside me and sighed. "I think you finally did something for yourself, and that scares them." Her words lingered in the air. Ike, the salt breeze. After a while, she added, "Ethan's furious. Said something about the beach house. He was on the phone with a realtor before the ceremony. Ebru, I turned to her, my heart thudding. "A realtor?" Ebru, she nodded. Apparently he'd already been working on selling it. He told everyone it was his property now. Said you'd already signed some paperwork. Oh, Burai. I froze. I signed nothing. Naomi frowned. How do you even describe that feeling when betrayal comes not from a stranger, but from the child you held, fed, and loved beyond words? The next morning Ethan arrived. I heard his car before I saw it, gravel crunching like broken glass. Ebru, he walked up the steps, his face tight with frustration. "Mom, what were you thinking?" He started before I could speak. "Do you know how embarrassing that was? Lacey was humiliated." Sold my hup, Ted. You sold my house. Abrotaus. Mid-sentence. What? Abrher. You sold my beach house. I held up the papers, with my signature, the one you tricked me into giving. Bruce, for the first time, his voice faltered. I didn't trick you, Mom. You wouldn't have agreed otherwise. Eber! Otherwise? My voice cracked like a thin branch under pressure. Other pressure? You mean if you'd asked me honestly? Bro, he sighed, rubbing his temples. It's complicated. The wedding was expensive. I thought you'd understand. I do understand, I said, my voice low, and I understand perfectly that you saw me as a resource, not a mother. He looked away. You don't get it, Mom. You're living in memories. That house isn't even being used. I stepped closer. That house is me, Ethan. It's your father's memory. It's where I taught you to fish, where you learned tatri when everything else fell apart. Brr, his jaw tightened. You're being sentimental. Then I'll die sentimental, I whispered, but at least I'll die knowing I still have my soul. Hey, Brr. He left without another word. The sound of his car fading down the road was the loneliest echo I'd ever heard. That night, I sat outside again, the papers still in my lap. Ebruk, and for the first time since I'd sent that letter, I cried. Not from weakness, mourning the version of my son I thought I knew. Days passed. The calls slowed. The noise quieted. Ram. And then one morning a letter arrived. From Ethan, Abri. Mom, Abri, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought I was doing what was best for all of us. But I see now that I hurt you. I can't undo what's done, but I can fix one thing. Feber, the sale hasn't closed yet. If you want, I'll cancel it. I just hope one day you'll forgive me. Ibrhe, Ethan. I read the letter 3 times, the ink smudged from what I guessed were tears. For a long while I just sat there, letting the words settle in. Ibrhe, forgiveness. Such a small word for something so heavy. Later that evening, Naomi called. He told me he canceled the sale, she said. He's been quiet lately. Says he can't stop thinking about what he did. Ben nodded silently. Then she asked, Mom, are you going to forgive him? I looked out at the waves, golden in the fading sun, and said softly, Burr, I already have, but I don't think he understands that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. As night fell, I lit a small candle and placed it by the window. Not for grief, not for anger, but for clarity, the kind that comes after a storm. Ibrahi, I whisper, to the sea, you can lose everything, your house, your pride, your illusions. But if you find your peace, you've gained it all back. Ibrahu, and in the distance, I imagined Ethan sitting somewhere, holding that same truth in silence. It's been 6 months since that day. Abrower, the air by the beach feels different now, lighter somehow. Or maybe it's me who's changed. Ethan visits sometimes, not often, and never unannounced. Ebru, he always knocks, waits on the porch like a boy again. There's a carefulness in his tone now, the kind that comes from learning the hard way that love doesn't mean ownership. The first time he came back after the letter, he stood there holding a small box. Inside was a seashell wind chime, handmade, uneven, but lovely. I thought, maybe you'd like this for the porch, he said quietly. Ibri Brr. I took it, smiled, and said, Thank you, Ethan. It's beautiful. We didn't talk about the house, or the betrayal, or the tears. Some wounds don't need to be reopened. They just need time to breathe. Naomi and her husband visit more often now, too. Sometimes she helps me bake, and we laugh about little things. The burnt pies, the too salty soup, the way I still can't find my reading glasses half the time. But sometimes, in quiet moments, she'll say, Mom, you know, what you did changed more than you think. Everyone's thinking differently now. About boundaries. About respect. Abru. I nod, smiling, because she's right. In families, especially big ones, love can get tangled with expectation. People forget that mothers are human, not endless wells to draw from, but souls with their own edges, their own limits. And it took me almost 70 years to say the word no without guilt. Ibrahra. A few weeks ago, I got an invitation. It was from Lacey, yes, Ethan's wife. She's expecting their first baby. The card was soft pink, with little footprints embossed in gold. At the bottom, a small handwritten note. Ibrahri, I hope you'll be part of this baby's life. I know I misjudged you. I'm sorry for that. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time holding that card. There was a time when I might have ignored it, let the hurt speak louder than hope. But I've learned forgiveness doesn't mean they deserve it. It means you deserve peace. Ibri, so I called her. Lacey, I said when she picked up. Congratulations. And yes, I'd love to be part of your baby's life. Ibri, her baby's cracked when she whispered, Thank you, Mom. Ah, Bree, and in that fragile word, Mom, I heard something new, not entitlement, not demand, but love. The day I first met the baby, the sun was shining like it used to when Ethan was little. Lacey looked tired but happy, and when she handed me that tiny bundle, I swear my heart melted. Abr said the baby's name was Name was Clara Rose. Clara Rose. Ethan chose it. Lacey said, he wanted to honor you. Abru, for a moment, I couldn't speak. All I could do was hold that baby close, breathing in the sweet scent of new life, of second chances. And in that small, sleeping face, I saw forgiveness written across generations. Ibrahri, I.S. Till keep the beach house. Ibru, not for its walls or its value, but for what it represents, the lesson it carved into me. Sometimes I sit by the window, listening to the chime Ethan made. The seashells sing softly when the wind passes through, a gentle reminder that beauty often comes from what's been broken and pieced together again. People often ask me, how did you find the strength to forgive? Ibr, and I tell them this, I stopped seeing forgiveness as a gift to others. It's a way of freeing yourself from the weight of pain you didn't ask. Forgiveness isn't about pretending nothing happened. It's about choosing peace over poison. One evening, as the tide came in, Ethan joined me on the porch. We sat in silence for a while before he said, Ibrahri, I think Dad would have been proud of you. I smiled faintly. I think he'd have been proud of you too. It takes courage to admit you were wrong. He nodded, his eyes misty in the fading light. Thank you, Mom, for not giving up on me. Burch. I reached over, took his hand and whispered, Burhi, you're my son. I can't unlove you. I can only hope you learn to love better. Really looked, and I knew he finally understood. That night, after he left, I stood by the window watching the waves roll in. The sea, with all its moods, gentle, fierce, endless, has always mirrored motherhood. You give, you bend, you break, and still you return. And as the moonlight touched the water, I whispered to myself, you can't control what others take from you, but you can control what you rebuild. I closed the window, feeling the cool breeze dance through the chime, and smiled, because somewhere between loss and love, I had found myself again. You know, sometimes the hardest part of love isn't giving, it's letting go. When you spend years pouring yourself into others, you start to believe that's all you're meant for. But one day, when the giving turns into taking, your spirit begins to whisper, you deserve peace too. Ibri Clara. A's story reminded me, peace doesn't always come wrapped in kindness. Sometimes it comes in silence, in walking away from what doesn't honor you anymore. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't fight back. She simply chose herself, and in doing so, she taught her son what love really looks like. Not control, not guilt, but truth. Ibra, forgiveness isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's the strength to say, you hurt me, but I won't live inside that hurt. So tonight, maybe take a moment to ask yourself, are you holding on to something that's already teaching you to let go? And if you did, could you finally breathe again? Because sometimes the most powerful revenge is peace. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. Would you have forgiven them or walked away for good? And if you'd like to hear more stories like this, stories about strength, forgiveness, and the quiet courage of everyday women, make sure you subscribe. Every week, we share real CES, real lessons, and the kind of truth that stays with you.